Hello, my name is Jenna Whiteley, and I would like to present a little bit of history about the Point Elliott Treaty and the people and land at Port Madison, Washington. In the Pacific Northwest of the United States lies the state of Washington, which is divided into eastern and western Washington by the Cascade Mountain Range. In western Washington, we find Puget Sound. Many Indian tribes and bands lived along the banks of Puget Sound in 1792, when Captain Vancouver discovered the area for the United States. In the mid-1800s, the unstoppable westward movement of U.S. citizens was beginning to foment confrontations with the Indians. Territorial Governor Isaac Stevens negotiated several treaties with Western Washington Indians in 1855. One of those was the Treaty of Point Elliott, which included 22 named tribes and some subordinate tribes and bands located from central Puget Sound to the Canadian border. While the treaties were negotiated by tribal leaders and the United States, the parties were Indians and citizens. In Article I, all of the usual and accustomed roaming area of those tribes was ceded to the United States for a sum of money. In Article II, 3 temporary reserves for the present use and occupation of the tribes of 1,280 acres were established, where the Indians could proceed with the assimilation process, which was the policy of the United States at that time. One of these reservations was at Port Madison. Article III set aside a larger 36-square-mile permanent reservation at Port Gardner and stated that the intention of the United States was to eventually move all Indians living west of the Cascade Mountains to the reservation at Port Gardner. The treaty described one Article II reserve as 1,200 acres at the head of the bight at Port Madison. The land had not yet been surveyed, but it was not deemed necessary as the reserve was temporary. The red-marked area is what 1,200 acres of land would look like. Article 7 of the treaty allowed the privilege of taking individual land assignments for Indian families that wished to give up tribal living and build individual homes. The Indians at Port Madison accepted that privilege, but not enough land was available. The Undersecretary of the Interior removed land from the public domain and added over 6,000 acres to the 1,280-acre reservation in 1864. Now delineated as shown into 2 separate areas, the reserve area was now listed as 7,284 acres. On November 4, 1886, individual Indian families received restricted fee deeds to all the land shown in red, which is more than 3/4 of the reserved area. Restricted fee deeds are entirely different from trust deeds, since title to the land belongs to the owner, not the federal government. The black cross-hatched area was set aside for U.S. government use. The allotment process continued. By 1910, the entire reserve had been allotted in restricted fee except for the area marked in green, which remained for the U.S. government use. The yellow, which had also been for government use, together with the area in orange that was a part of 2 allotments that were bought back from the allottees, were transferred to the War Department as the site for a fort. However, no fort was built, and the land became surplus and was sold by the War Department on the open market. No land was ever allotted for any tribe since the object was assimilation. The exchange of restricted fee deeds for fee simple deeds at the request of the owners started by 1909. By 1935, the reserved area, that part in restricted fee or owned by the government, is listed as 4,412 acres. By 1954, it was 4,123 acres. In 1971, only some 2,680 acres remained, and in 1991, there were only some 2,400 acres in the reserve. The area in yellow had all been sold to non-tribal members and was in state jurisdiction. All of this was done with the full knowledge and aid of the federal government under the rules established by the Dawes Act, the Burke Act, etc. When the land became fee simple, it became a part of the state just like any other part. It was fully taxable by the state, and the former Indian owners became citizens of both the United States and the state in which they were located. I use the term former Indian since he or she, now a citizen, is no longer part of a separate political group called Indians that were dealt with by the treaty. The federal government had no ownership or interest in that land. The Federal Register contains the biannual reports to Congress made by the Department of the Interior. In those reports, the size of each reservation is noted, and the Port Madison Reservation was noted as being decreased in size by every allotted area that was transferred to fee simple ownership through all the years from 1904 until 1993, when those notations were dropped and the entire expanded area was again called Reservation without any action by Congress. All of the property owners who bought land here prior to 1993 and who inquired about the status of that land from the Department of Interior were informed that it was no longer a federal Indian reservation. Now they are being told that it is. Federal Indian policy has changed considerably over the years, but a change in policy does not change history. All branches of the federal government bear responsibility for this disaster. State governments that have not defended the constitutional rights of all citizens are also to blame.